Hey everybody, welcome into the back room. I'm Andy Ostroy. We've got Don Lemon back with us today, and we're going to chat with Don about his new book in just a few moments. But first, thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you listening, and we'd love to hear your comments. So email us at backroomandy@gmail.com and or post on our social media, and we'll read some feedback next time. And if you like the podcast, please follow or subscribe and rate and review, and you'll be notified every time we post a new episode. So, Don Lemon, he is a best-selling author, award-winning journalist, and former anchor of the long-running CNN primetime program, Don Lemon Tonight, who earlier this year launched The Don Lemon Show, which is now streaming on all platforms. Don has won a variety of distinguished awards, including an Edward R. Murrow Award, multiple Emmys, and a Peabody Award, among others. He's also been recognized as a leading influential figure by Ebony magazine, The Advocate, Out, and others. And in 2011, he broke barriers by revealing he was gay in his autobiographical book, Transparent. His 2021 book, This Is Fire, What I Say to My Friends About Racism, debuted at #1 on the New York Times bestseller list and was inspired by the murder of George Floyd at the hands of a Minneapolis police officer. His new book is I Once Was Lost, My Search for God in America. Don, welcome back into the back room.
Hi, Andy. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. It's good to see you. How you been?
Likewise, I'm good, just...
You gotta look like twins. I mean, we got the black glasses on and the black shirt.
It's a reflection of my soul when I wear dark. Congrats on the book. I Once Was Lost, My Search for God in America. It's truly enlightening. It's thought-provoking. It's deeply personal and profoundly honest, and I really enjoyed it.
Oh, wow. Thank you. That's high praise coming from you.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
coming from an atheist like me.
Wasn't it surprising, though, that, I mean, when people read the title, they're like, oh, another book about religion. But it's not just about religion.
No, it's not. It's literally got so much else in there. I've always viewed religion as being very complicated.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not black and white. It's gray. It's full of nuance. And that's really the theme of your book, is how not only is religion and God and faith nuanced and complicated, but it's for you personally in your own journey, in your own life, you've had a complicated relationship with it. And so that's why I say, for me, it was such an honest take on religion and your experience with it.
Yeah. Well, I write in the book that as a black man, I have a complicated relationship with the flag, and as a gay man, I have a complicated relationship with the Bible, and thus is, my life, right? And so it is nuanced. And you say that it's complicated, but I don't think, I think religion is complicated. I don't believe faith is that complicated. And I don't believe that the belief in God, if you believe in God, and if you don't want to, that's fine with me. But I don't believe it's that complicated. I think that if your belief should be, I think everyone's belief should be, that God is meant to make us bigger, more open, more accepting, more humane, more human, more loving. And if not, then why do we even have a concept of God if that's not what it's meant? And James Baldwin said something which was, he was much more articulate about it, but he said something very similar as well.
Well, that's interesting because you do talk about how your life is about God and faith and religion. To someone like me, those three things are kind of blurred. So I would love to know from you, what do those things mean to you as separate, distinct things?
I'll save religion for last because that's the least of what I believe in. So one, I believe in a higher power, God, that is not a big boss on top of us, judging us and telling us what to do, right? As I said, that concept is to believe that there is a higher power, or something that you should aspire to make you better and to evolve into something that is beyond just yourself. So that is what God means to me. Faith is about the evidence of things that's not seen. And to me, faith is believing in that humanity can be better. And faith is not magical thinking to me, because some people believe if I have faith in this and I believe and I pray, then magically that God and all of these things will appear. That's not what I believe by faith. I believe that my relationship with God And my faith will make me a better person for my family, will make me a better husband. It'll make me a better son. It'll make me a better brother. I have faith in my family that they're going to be there to support me. I have faith in my God and the universe, that it is here to take care of me. And otherwise, it's sort of antithetical to what life is about. You're here to thrive and be the best that you can be until you're not. And so I have faith that that process will play out until it's time for me not to be here, and then I will be somewhere else. Religion, Andy, I just don't know if I even believe in religion, because I think that so many wars and so much evil and so many bad things have come from religion that I just don't really believe in it. And I think that sometimes I wish that we would just sort of get rid of the religion. I always say that I'm a person of faith. I believe in God, but I'm not churchy. So, and some people may need that. Some people need to be in church. Some people need to be religious. And if you need that, then that's your business. But I don't need all of those things, and nor do I want them. And I think part of the reason that I believe that I don't need them is because through the church and through religion came, I was ostracized through the church because church told me that I was an abomination as a gay man. Right. That's not what the actual text says. That's not what my God says, and that's not what my faith teaches me. So those, I believe two of those are important to me. One is not.
So let's break down the title of the book a little bit. Can you tell us how and when you were lost, and what sent you on this journey to find God, perhaps not just for yourself, but in America?
Well, I think that I was lost. I think America is kind of lost as well. I had a crisis of faith back in 2018 when my sister died. And I was like, well, why would why would any God do this? Especially one that's supposed to be a benevolent God and a loving God and a caring God and all that. Why would he take away, someone who was thriving and living a good life with, she had young grandkids that her eyes weren't big enough to see, and she went to every ball game and school play and function and whatever class day it was. She was so proud of her grandkids and her kids. Why would God suddenly take my sister away in an accidental drowning? Right? She went out fishing, fell in the water, died accidentally, drowned accidentally because it was colder, and that she had she had a jacket on, and that sort of thing. So, I had a crisis of faith. And then also in my work, I found that religion had been affecting our politics. Not faith, not God, but religion had been infecting our politics, and that evangelicals were not just trying to blur the line between church and state, Andy. I believe that they were trying to erase that line. And that push towards theocracy was pushing us away from God, if you believe it, and if you don't, then you should know that it was pushing us further away from democracy, because America is not supposed to be a theocracy. And so I started writing the book in 2022 before I got let go from CNN. And once I got let go from CNN, I said, I'm going to take the summer off. I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to ponder what I'm going to do. I'm not even going to continue writing this book. I'm just going to put it aside. And I took the summer off, and I went back to it in the fall, and it became a much different book. It was supposed to be a book about I was going to talk to faith leaders and people who were of faith and others who were not, maybe like you, an atheist or what have you. And it turned out not to be that. It became much more personal about my journey and my journey to find out what was real and what was God's place, or what is God's place in American society, culture, and politics. And I'm not really sure that there is a place for God in American politics. There's a place in culture, there's a place in our society, but there's not really a place for it in politics.
Well, in theory, yes, but it's used and exploited quite
and that's the whole point. Right? Amen. Mr. Non-believer. I don't think that we should be creating laws that are based on our religion.
Yeah. The book opens with this really emotionally moving letter to your sister, Lisa. And you say later in the book, quote, grief swept in like a tsunami. And you also say, most of the time, I'm okay. Loss settles in like the sound of the ocean, always there in the background. You get used to it. You almost forget how powerful it is, how you can drown in it if you're not careful. You know, a lot of people know my story. My wife, Adrienne, was murdered in 2006, so it's been 18 years. That passage in the book so resonated with me because that is what grief is. First, it hits you like a tsunami, but then the waves truly never go away, right? They're always there. You know they're there, and sometimes they just creep up on you and they knock you over. And that's why I always struggle with the idea of closure, because it never seems to be closure. But also it speaks to what you were saying about your crisis of faith, because I went through the same thing. It's like, how can the world lose somebody so amazing as Adrienne? And it sort of made me evaluate and reevaluate everything I believed.
How did you get through that without faith? Were you a person of faith before that happened?
No, I never really thought much about it. But like you, when that happened, it was like, how could I, even if I wanted to, how could I embrace something that, like you write in the book, it's God's plan. You know, it's like I just couldn't understand how that could be a plan, how that could be somebody's will, how that could happen. It just got very convoluted for me, like the logic of having faith in something that, you know, is supposed to protect you or protect the loved ones in your life. I don't know. I relied on other things. I didn't have that kind of faith in my life to rely on.
But when you talk about, you know, you said that it's complicated. I don't know. I don't know if belief is complicated, and I don't know if faith is complicated. But I think religion is complicated, right? And I've said that to you. Religion can be complicated because all one has to do is apply critical thinking, and then you will come up with something that at least a sane version of faith. Because otherwise, there's no, you know, it's like magical thinking. It's like Santa Claus.
Yes.
And I don't believe that it should be that way. And, you know, and I write about it. I challenge people of belief. And I think that's what appealed to you as a non-believer, is that I actually challenge people about that. Let's put some critical thinking. Really, an immaculate conception? Come on, guys.
Mm-hmm.
It couldn't be just, you know, good enough that Joseph was this benevolent person who was trying to help out a woman who had gotten pregnant out of wedlock. Like, that wasn't a good enough narrative that you had to make it into, you know, a divine sort of immaculate conception that, you know, come on, these things are beyond belief.
Mm-hmm.
And if I think what I'm trying, I know that what I'm trying to do, what I write in the book, is to try to get people to understand that the Bible is not a book. It's a library of mythology and parables, right? And lessons that teach us how to be better human beings and how to sustain trauma and loss and grief. And it's not a book of facts and concrete history that you can go back and look at and say, well, this is 100% and this happened on this day. It didn't. There are many, many stories that are very similar to the Jesus story that, you know, happened thousands of years before Jesus ever walked the earth, right? So, you know, I challenge people on their beliefs around that, and I open them up to the possibility that, and to an awareness that Jesus' story is not the only story. That there are people who serve other gods, different gods, and who have different religious beliefs, and there's room for everyone if you're going to believe in a divine figure.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. But you know, I'm sure some Christians may get upset by the book, you know, especially when I write about homosexuality and I challenge that the Bible doesn't really say that. You know, when all this Leviticus stuff, it's all in the interpretation. And some people may think that I'm actually not very faithful because I don't believe in their toxic evangelical teachings.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all well and good. I believe that what they say about religion, I believe that most of what evangelicals have done in recent history, in modern history, is a bunch of bullshit and is hypocritical.
Well, you obviously have a problem with hypocrisy. You write about that, you know, because we're seeing so much of that today.
We are.
You know, interestingly, when you write about the Bible, you say, quote, the Bible is worth a read, whatever your belief system. Genesis alone has more kink factor, battle scenes, and geopolitical intrigue than Game of Thrones. That's awesome.
I mean, I think it's one of the most dramatic books. Have you ever read the Bible?
No, don't think I will either. But
I mean,
I've heard of it. I hear people like it, but I don't think it's for me.
it's one of the most dramatic books ever written, and you're like, wow. I mean, it's, it is. It was Harry Potter before Harry Potter, right? It's just that there's this guy named Jesus in there that does all of these magical things and parts the Red Sea and all of that stuff, and turns people into stone or sand figures, right? Salt figures. So if you read it with a grain of salt, as we're talking about that, and sort of tongue in cheek is the way we're doing it. And if people stop taking it so seriously as a book of fact, I think that we would all be in a better position right now if we took the religion, right, out of belief in God. And that's, people say, oh, well, how do you do that? Well, we're the ones who created that. We're the ones who made up religions. We're the ones who did that. So if you take all of that out, perhaps that people wouldn't be dying over land and over rights and over, well, my God says this and this many virgins, and that maybe there would not be so much death and destruction.
Well, there's an incredible moment in my friend Shelley Wright, who I believe you know as well, her documentary, where her pastor, who's guiding her through her imminent coming out process, warns her that, quote, there's nobody quite as mean as people being mean for Jesus. If Jesus were here today, what do you think he'd say about today's Christianity?
I think he would say that you're not really Christians, is that you think you are Christians. You're actually worshiping a false God. We're talking about religion. You have made guns a religion. You have made telling people what to do, mandating what they do with their bodies can and cannot do a religion. You've made politics a religion. And you think that you're making me a religion, but you're not. I think he would think that Christians are big hypocrites. Because if you think about, especially now, evangelicals, all these folks and especially even the MAGA evangelical, and religious nationalist people, think about what they're doing. It's somehow bad now to want to help the poor. It's bad to want to help people in need. It's become okay to demonize homeless people or people who are looking for asylum or looking for a better life. It's okay to demonize people of color. It has been okay since, Jesus walked the earth to subjugate women, to enslave people of color, and on and on. He would go, what are you doing? You're doing the exact opposite of what I would be doing. Where would he be? I think Jesus would be out with the least of these, trying to help those in need, trying to offer some comfort to those in need. If that is what you believe in, if that's your concept of religion is Christianity, that's what Jesus would be doing. And perhaps Moses would be doing the same thing, or Allah would be doing the same thing. They would be out trying to help the least of these rather than trying to hang on to power and fighting over land and rights and starting wars. I think he would say, you guys have it all wrong. And maybe he would even say, I don't know, maybe self-destruction is your only way out of it.
It's a scary thought.
And that's what you're on the road to.
As you note in the book, we continue to see a shift by more and more Americans away from religion. The share of atheists, or nuns as they're more commonly known these days, is larger than any individual religious group. But you're a man of faith, and you find yourself identifying with the nuns. So that's quite nuanced and paradoxical in itself. And that's the part that I really enjoyed about the book, is that how you are navigating through that space.
You said, I find myself identifying with the knots, right?
The nuns. Make sure. The nuns.
Nuns, yeah. The nuns.
Not the nuns.
The non-believers.
Not the habit
right?
nuns, the non-believer nuns.
Non-believer nuns. Yeah, I find myself, again, I hate to keep going back to this whole religious thing. People find themselves so wedded to religion and that their beliefs that they don't allow any room for anything else. And they don't allow room for forgiveness and for individuality and for evolution and for progression, because they're so wedded to the Bible and what the texts say, that they're constantly looking back instead of looking forward,
Mm-hmm.
or looking at what's right in front of them. And so I, I believe that the way to fix that is because, everyone says, oh, well, I was created in God's image. So they're trying to create a God. Most people are trying to create a God in their image instead of looking for the image of God in their fellow man, which is what they should be doing.
Mm-hmm.
But instead, the Christians these days, answers the question that you had before, the Christians these days are so busy trying to create a God in their image that they have forgotten what the actual concept of what God is. And that's why I identify with the nuns more than I do with the actual Christians or evangelicals.
Mm-hmm. And so the other part of the title, The Search for God, did you find what you're seeking?
You have to read the book, Andy.
I did. No, but I'm asking you. I don't know if
Well,
my audience read it.
That's up to you. You have to figure out if I find them. I believe that there is the Bible says, question everything. Question everything. And
Mm-hmm.
someone just asked me, gosh, last night. Let me look it up. Someone just asked me just last night, I can't believe that you said that about the Bible. The Bible says question everything. Where is that? And it's in Thessalonians, and it's 5:19 through 22. It says, don't suppress the spirit and don't stifle those who have a word from the master. On the other hand, don't be gullible. Check out everything and
Mm-hmm.
keep only what's good. Throw out anything tainted with evil. That's why I believe in the nuns. I
Mm-hmm.
question everything and I keep what's good and I throw out the things that are tainted with evil. And I believe that in the control, in the judgment, in the trying to tell people what they can and cannot do with their lives and their bodies, I believe that that is the tainted, and I've thrown that out. So I think through that questioning, um, if you really do it earnestly and you go deep enough, that you will find God.
Mm-hmm.
Even you, Andy, will find God.
There's hope for me yet, right? In the book, there's a great story.
I want you to know that it's not necessarily what my concept of what God is.
Mm-hmm.
It's not necessarily what your neighbor's concept of what God is. It's not necessarily what the Catholic Church tells you or the Baptist Church or what Judaism tells you. It's what your concept of
Yeah.
God
Well,
is.
I used to think Eric Clapton was God until he went anti-vax. But in the book, you mentioned this story about when you were 5 years old, when your Jackson 5 ABC album was stolen in preschool. I'm impressed, A, that you had a Jackson 5 album when you were 5, by the way. But you write that, quote, God had turned his back on me. Was that the
Mm-hmm.
first time? That's a profound moment, but was that the first time on any level that you either became disillusioned with religion? I mean, as much as a 5-year-old could, or at least started asking questions the way you were just talking about?
Well, I mean, look, a 5-year-old believes in magical thinking, right? The Easter Bunny, Santa Claus, all those things, fairy tale,
Mm-hmm.
Peter Pan, or whatever, which is great. Okay, I did all those things. But as you get older, you start to uh, employ critical thinking, and you mature and you realize. So that was the first time that I believe that yes, that I had that sort of questioning, like, okay, wait a minute, why would God take my Jackson 5 album? I loved it. I brought it to nursery
It's
school.
blasphemous.
You remember the old? We're men of a certain age. I assume we're around the same age, 40s, 50s, right?
Let's just call it Jackson
And
5 age.
yeah, when you had the record player that you carried in the like a suitcase,
Mm-hmm.
and the teacher, or either the one that they would wheel into the room, and you would
Mm-hmm.
open it up and you put the vinyl right and play it on that scratchy speaker. And we played. I brought my Jackson 5 album in, and we danced to the Jackson 5
I know the
album.
penguin dance. Okay.
Yeah,
If this
you
was
remember the
video, I'd
penguin?
ask you to do that for the audience.
Come on, girl, show you can take it, shake it, baby.
Not bad.
Right?
Not
You
bad
see,
at all.
here's it, 1, 2, 3.
Ooh, take
So
that on
it's
the
all
road.
that. Right. And then I went back to get my album, and it was gone. Some like preschool thief
Jesus.
had stolen my Jackson 5 album. And so on my Christmas list, I put down that I wanted an album, and I ended up getting the album. So my faith in God was restored.
That's a beautiful story.
But I do write about the real critical thinking when I
Hmm.
started to question Santa Claus is when I started really to question, like, to have sort of critical thinking around God. When, remember, I write in the book about my parents getting the flu
Hmm.
for Christmas, and I woke up and there were no presents under the tree, and we were like, "What? Where is it?" And my grandmother was there, and she said, "Oh, just go back to bed. Santa's late. He's very busy. Whatever." And by the time we woke up, my parents had managed to get out of their blue um, slump, stupor, and deliver the toys and sit there on the couch, like passed out, until they could go back to bed. And then I started to realize, like, okay, they're delivering this stuff. It's not really Santa. And so that's when I started to think about all those things,
Hmm.
questioning
It's
the
a
whole.
lot for a kid, and it's also a hell of a lot for an adult to try to navigate through this whole business of God and religion.
By the way, I could see why people are not believers. I mean, look, logically, it does not make sense.
No. Well, I
It
mean,
does.
look, how many stories were there about a school bus going off a cliff and one kid out of 50 lives and the parents are being interviewed and they go, God was with little Johnny today. My first
What
thought is,
about,
what about the other 49 kids? Like, where was
yeah,
God? You
or
know?
why did the accident happen anyways
Right,
in the
right.
first place?
So, but you
Yeah,
can't,
but
you can't go there because they're,
yeah,
or it's also like Jordan Klepper when he goes out into the MAGA rallies and, there's book bannings and he starts reading off all these horrible things that are in a book about
Bible.
sex and this and that. And he's like, that should be banned, right? And they're like, yeah. And he's like, that's the Bible, right? So people don't even know what's in the Bible.
When I read about a religion that is part of human sacrifices and bloodlust or whatever, and it's like, what is that? Yeah, that's Christianity.
Yeah. Well, I'm a Jew. My faith is in the cultural aspect of being a Jew, but I'm not a religious Jew. But Judaism is the same thing, same shit all the way around. In our last couple of minutes, I want to ask you about politics. Yesterday, we saw the release by Judge Tanya Chutkan of Special Counsel Jack Smith's filing in the D.C. January 6th election interference case. Stunning new revelations of Trump's criminal behavior. He said, so what, when told the rioters want to hang Mike Pence. And when one of his aides warned that his rhetoric could cause a riot, he said, make them riot. What do you think, if anything, is going to come from this? I mean, we're living in an age where, 9 years ago, he said, I grab women's private parts, and 73 million people made him president. Like, are we beyond the point of where anything that comes out is going to have any impact when it comes to Donald Trump?
Yes, because they don't care. People say, he's just gotten worse, and he is, by leaning into these things, whatever. And I say, no, he has not gotten worse. He's remained the same person that you know. It's just that you've become used to it,
That's right.
or you want to say he's gotten worse because you want an excuse you're trying to rationalize something that is not there. He's the same person. He's always been a terrible person. He will remain a terrible person, and especially if someone who is of faith and believes, I can see that he's a terrible person. I can't understand why anybody would support the man. And I can't, I would not have been able to say that when I was in corporate media, but I can now. But yes, we're beyond that. And I think the rise and reign of Donald Trump says more about the people in America than it does about him.
Mm-hmm. At this point, for sure.
Like, I mean, think about it. The guy, all you have to read the stuff that Jack Smith put out there. I mean, the guy says, one of my 11,780 votes, I believe, is what he said. And then you have the official, I don't know if you read it, where he says they called one of his campaign people was on the phone with an election person in one of the states, and he says, there's no fraud. We can't find anything. There's no fraud. And he goes, well, you have to find something,
Right.
You have to give me something to litigate. And they're like, it's nothing there. But they just could not accept it. I don't get it. I really don't get it. And as someone who doesn't belong to a political party and someone who has been a Republican in my life years ago when I was in college and then became an independent, I really don't understand it at all.
So,
Except to say that it is a true cult.
yeah, well, that's the answer. And that sort of dovetails into my next question. I wanted to ask you about the debate, but I want to ask you in particular, because I've been following your posts in the last few days. You've been, people have been critical of your criticism of Tim Walz's answer when the subject of his China trip came up. And I'm with you 100%. And the reason I'm with you and we share the same opinion on that is because we are not in a cult, right? We're okay. Like, I'm supporting Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, but I'm okay also criticizing them when it's obvious. Like, you know, when I watched that moment, I was like, obviously Pete Buttigieg, and you didn't prep for this answer because this was the worst answer you could have possibly have given. And you said the same thing. You were live tweeting and whatever. And people were jumping on you. And it's like, you know, I get people all the time going, this isn't helpful, Andy. It's like, I'm not here to help. Okay.
That's not the thing. Or that's not, I'm not supposed to be, the help that I'm trying to give you is I'm trying to inform you, right? Make you be an informed citizen before you go to the polls and vote. But I'm not here to like put a tent pole in anyone's tent, hold it up. That's not what I'm here to do. But I support Kamala Harris and Tim Walz because they're on the side of democracy. But come on, you could not have had a better answer for that when you know that it came out earlier in the day and that you were going to be in a debate. All you had to do was say, look, that was a long time ago. I was in the region at the time. I got my dates mixed up, and I'm sorry that happened. But I was actually over there trying to do some good.
Yeah. Well, the criticism that you got and the takeaway from it is that it's symbolic of where we are today in this country. The tribalism. It's like Donald Trump can say the moon is made out of cheese, and then tomorrow, from the media on down to the man on the street, they'll be like, the moon is made out of cheese. No, the critical thinking part that we were talking about before is just gone. And I don't know how or when we ever get that back. But to me, when I watch this debate and then I see interviews with the so-called undecideds, it's like, I don't know, what are people waiting for? What are they waiting for?
I can tell you about that. But let me just, look, it's so, and even like a good friend of mine, like texted me and said, why are you doing this, Don? And then someone else said, shouldn't we be looking out for the good and whatever? And I said, I wonder if they would say that if it's about Donald Trump, right? Mm-hmm. And I know that he lies a lot more than Tim Walz or the mistake or whatever it is that Tim Walz, but it's like, come on, guys, like, really? Okay, so I don't believe that there are undecided voters at this point. I think people who are undecided are looking for some mission structure or an excuse to vote for Donald Trump or to support Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. That's it. They're looking for a reason to go, oh, that's why it's okay to support this horrible person. And why don't you just say, look, I want the tax cuts. I'm turning my back on anything because I want the tax cuts. That's it. That's why I support it.
Or am I racist?
Or just say, yeah, thank you. You took the words out of my mouth. Or I'm supporting him because I'm a racist. And I like what he says. That's it.
Yeah.
Just say it.
Look, I think your voice is really important. You're one of the few people who does speak honestly about a lot of subjects that people just don't want to talk about honestly. So I'm with you. Your book, again, is I Once Was Lost, My Search for God in America. It is a truly fantastic book. I recommend that people buy it and read it. Don, thank you so much for coming back into the back room, and I'm looking forward to our next conversation.
You are way too kind to me, and I haven't gotten much sleep, so I hope that I made some sense, because it's crazy. I mean, we're down to the wire. We are down to the wire, and I would encourage everyone who's listening to go out and vote, please. And make sure you are informed when you go to the polls.
Amen, brother. Take care.
Thank you. Buy the book.
Yep. See ya.
Thank you, Andy.
Bye-bye.
It's good to talk to you.
This episode of The Back Room was edited and produced by me, Andy Ostroy. It was co-edited and co-produced by Maddie Rosenberg and co-produced by Jen Hammoud. Our theme song was composed by Andrew Hollander, and our logo was designed by Cricket Langell. And special thanks to Patricia Wind. Please take a moment to rate and review the podcast, and also follow or subscribe. Until next time, keep your eyes on Washington, Hollywood, and your own backyards, and have a great week.